Good morning, everyone, and we are we are here in Paris, France. I'm not going to be all pretentious about it because take a look at this baby. We are here right by the Eiffel Tower, one of the most historical, iconic landmarks of all time in all the world. And I know that there's so many places to go to in Paris, so it was a little bit of a struggle as to figure out where would I take you on the vlog today. There's a couple of things that you can check out on the vlog, but in particular, why don't I take you to a village that used to be very separate from Paris, as a matter of fact. We're gonna go on a bit of a walk, but all you gotta do is sit on your couches. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Montmartre. So many sights to see here in Paris. Now, apart from the Eiffel and apart from the Notre Dame, here's another church, and not necessarily because it's a religious building, but simply because it is a breathtaking venue where you can see all of Paris right below you. So this church over here is called Sacré-Cœur. God, I hope I'm saying that right.
Sacré-Cœur.
And for those of you who just want it in plain English, it is Sacred Heart of Jesus. So it's Sacred Heart. Now, unlike so many other European cathedrals or basilicas, this baby over here is actually only 135 years old, because during the medieval times, religion, Catholicism, the Holy Church was truly in the seat of power, so powerful. However, later on, there was a lot of civil war that was happening here in France, and the Catholic Church was just, linked with nobility and the king. It wasn't liked very much. Now, inside, you're not allowed to take photos, but wow, it is absolutely stunning. You have this gorgeous mosaic that is right over there. It's Jesus Christ basically flanked by different French historical figures in relation to religion. One, of course, is Joan of Arc, who is Catholic martyr. There is another one who is also Saint Catherine. Oh goodness, I just went to her yesterday, where the Virgin Mary actually had an apparition to her. Then we also have, of course, Mont Saint-Michel, who is Saint Michael the Archangel, who is the patron saint of France. And we also have the Pope, and of course Saint Louis, who is Saint Louis, I believe, is this one over here. So Saint Louis the Ninth is considered a saint and was one of the kings of France. Now this one over here is actually Joan of Arc. And while I know a lot of people come to Montmartre, at the top of Montmartre, to see the Sacré-Cœur, one more reason to visit, whether it's for history or just to visit another church, this church right here is called St. Peter's Church. Now, it's actually the oldest, it's the St. Peter of Montmartre. So this is actually the oldest church in Montmartre. Once upon a time, this was actually an abbey with a church, but during the French Revolution, it was destroyed. Well, at least the abbey was destroyed, and the only remaining parts is this church over here. And then this over here, you would think is probably maybe some chateau or some palace or some extension of the church, but no, that's actually a water reservoir. Isn't that amazing? Of course, operational. It's actually responsible for making sure that everybody in the community gets like a clean water. But yeah, chic. So here in St. Peter of Montmartre, you would think that this door is just as old, but this is actually just made in the 1980s. Isn't that cool? Then the exterior, like I said, it was damaged during the Revolution, so this exterior is actually from the 18th century, and when we go inside, it's actually from the 13th century. If you take a look at Montmartre, it's quaint, it's lovely, it is like you are transported into another world. Well, once upon a time, Montmartre actually used to be independent from Paris. It was literally, it's had its own autonomy and independent from Paris completely. Like, I wouldn't say its own country because it was still a part of France, but it wasn't part of Paris. And then because of Napoleon Bonaparte, he wanted to consolidate Montmartre in Paris, and that's why it is part of Paris today. Now, if you actually come here, this is the heart of Montmartre, where there are all these different artists that are surrounding this little square, this courtyard right here. So pretty, absolutely lovely. All these different artists doing their own little paintings. Amazing, so lovely. This building right behind me is the very first city hall of Montmartre. Well, artists are usually known to like have a constant hangout that they like to contemplate, sketch, write, whatever it is. And here in Montmartre, this is one of them. It actually is inscribed at the top of the building. It's La Bonne Franquette. The other one right here is called, oh, here we go, you gotta get this right. Consulat. Le Consulat. Apparently, these two cafes across one another are really famous because famous artists like Picasso, Sisley, Degas, Cézanne, Benoit, Monet, Zola, Van Gogh have all hung out here. So can you imagine, maybe once upon a time, like you were sitting down in a cafe and having coffee, and Van Gogh just happens to be seated right across you, having an espresso of sorts. You know, a fun fact, Van Gogh, he wasn't really important back when he actually existed. It was only after he died when everybody took notice of him. Typical story of any artist. You know, unlike Picasso, who I know was actually quite wealthy, Van Gogh, on the other hand, he was a really simple guy. He didn't have a lot, and he was actually known to be like a frequent traveler, like a nomad. He's often known to stay in inns, in cafes, and all these different places where he's just constantly moving. He didn't want to have that feeling of being pinned or tied down to literally just one place. And it was here that he would, I guess, contemplate on life and do some of his artworks or find inspiration for his artworks. Now, do you see this? This pink facade, La Maison Rose. So in Emily in Paris, there was actually a table like right here, and she was sitting down with Mindy. And this is actually located in Montmartre. It's a really, really famous cafe. Unfortunately, it's closed today. But yeah, she's right on the corner. Absolutely lovely and quaint. So I think every person on the planet who has learned their history knows that Napoleon Bonaparte is truly one of the most prominent French figures in all of history. And we have this guy to thank. Well, at least this is his house. He is an historian. His name is Henry Lachouc, and he actually lived in Montmartre, and this was where he lived. Okay, so do you recall that scene in Emily in Paris where they were trying to figure out where to put that mattress, and Emily had just been fired, and that's why they were having like a meal in that pink cafe? Well, and then it was like midnight and they were having like a champagne bottle, drinking their sorrows away because she thought she was going back to America. This is that street at the end of that day at night where they filmed their last Instagram story, and it was actually right here. This is why it's good to hit it early. Do you see that street? Do you see those people right in the back? They are making their way. I'm pretty sure it's not because they want to see where the bed was situated, but it's simply because everybody comes to Montmartre to see the sights. Okay, so before the floods are coming in, this right here, that's a statue or a bust of a very famous French singer who dated the French president or was in love with the French president. That's Dalida. So this is Place Dalida. But that is actually where the mattress in Emily in Paris was placed, right underneath this tree. This is where Emily had actually shared the space with Camille, right? And then they had a little Instagram moment, and then Gabrielle saw it, and he was like, oh my goodness, sharing the bed with the enemy, or BFF in this case. Well, right there. Okay, so earlier I brought you to St. Peter's Church, right? And then you saw that very, very old column, which is sort of like what's left of by the time when the Romans actually came here in 54 BC. Now the Romans, they were pagans, and technically pagans means they had their own gods, and they had actually worshipped Mercury. He was a Greek god. So that's why one of the legends of the name of Montmartre is Montmartre, or supposedly Mount Mercury, and it just was shortened to Montmartre. That's one legend. Another legend is, now this is a beautiful garden that we have here in Montmartre. It's really, really quaint. It's honestly quite relaxing. Although the story of this guy, not so much. This is Saint Denis. So he was an evangelist, and if you don't know what an evangelist is one who actually tries to convert and spread their faith to whoever. It could be any religion, and in this case, Catholicism or Christianity. So when he had come here, he was the very first evangelist that came here to France. And of course, the Romans, when they were here, they were like, "What are you doing? Dude, we're pagans. We don't like we don't like the message that you're trying to spread." So the Romans, they had actually arrested him together with his two companions, and in this very place he was beheaded. Now this is where it gets a little bit dark. So he gets beheaded, a little bit dark and slightly like Marvel movies levels, because it's a little bit too whew. So supposedly after he got beheaded, Saint Denis fell to his knees and he picked up his own head and he still started walking and walking, not sure exactly to where, but the second legend is basically that Montmartre is short for martyr. So because Denis, evangelist Denis, had actually died for his Christian faith, he offered his life to God. And so Montmartre. So one of the other places, or one of the other, how shall I say, art installations that you're going to find in Montmartre is of this gentleman right here. It's actually of a statue that is literally penetrating through the wall. So there's a really, really famous French author. The name is actually on the street, and he wrote, it was a funny story actually. It was a comedy of sorts, and he was saying that the story, it was about a man who had the ability, he was just a very regular guy, and he just had the ability to walk through walls, and that is the interpretation. Very cool. So we've all heard the legend of, well, not legend, it's actually quite true, the Moulin Rouge, right? So Moulin is actually French for windmill, and rouge is red. Well, obviously it's not this one. I think we're going to get to that later, but it doesn't matter. Here we are here in, oh goodness, Le Moulin de Galette.
Le Moulin de la Galette.
So galette is a kind of wheat, or rather a kind of crepe, according to our tour guide, Philippe. So different windmills through the power of wind. Was a very more primitive way of actually trying to for powder, for paint, for perfume, and in this case for wheat. So this is one of the 2 windmills left out of the 20. Apparently there were 20 here in Montmartre. Now just think, back in the day when Montmartre was just its own little village, there was not a lot of houses, although there were a lot of windmills, all 20 of them, I believe. And because they were independent from the city, from Paris, a lot of the locals from Paris would actually love to come here to Montmartre. Why? Things were cheaper. And in particular, this was also a cabaret. So cabaret, it's basically party central. People like to party here, especially if they wanted to save money and still have a great time. Not exactly the red light district, but yes, a cabaret. Nowadays, it is a very fancy restaurant that you can eat in. Not necessarily a creperie, but this windmill was not actually in its original location. It was transferred here to this quaint little corner in Montmartre. Okay, still continuing with our tour of Montmartre. This is the Museum de Montmartre. So earlier I had showed you 2 cafes where likes of Van Gogh, Picasso had their had their coffee. They hung out there and contemplated on life and hung out with one another. Well, they needed a place to sleep in, or at least like crash for the night or two, and this is exactly where they did that. It is now a museum, but it's basically the structure here that you see right behind me. So a lot of them there was almost like a workshop for a lot of these artists. It was quite interesting because Picasso, as we know, his art is, I think it's called cubism, or it's just basically not realistic at all. And there's a very famous painting of him that is located now in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And it was actually, he painted it right here. So from another movie we have here from Amélie. So Audrey Tautou, you may know her as acting alongside Tom Hanks in the Da Vinci Code. So she came out in an Oscar award-winning movie. I believe it was an American Academy Award, Amélie. And this grocery was actually shown there, this very scene in Montmartre. So as I was making my way down, I actually saw that, this doesn't look very authentic, meaning like the rest of Montmartre, as quaint as it is and just very Parisian or very French, you knew it was real. But here, it actually looks like a beautiful film set, which it actually is. So definitely showing that Montmartre has been and will continue to be a place to film movies, to film iconic scenes and your favorite TV shows, whether local or international. So apparently this is a set for a local French film. It's about a French singer. So I actually think it's like a biopic of sorts. So it's about a French singer, and this is one of the first scenes in the beginning of the movie. I wouldn't say first scene, but somewhere in the beginning, because it's actually showing that he had very simple beginnings, simple childhood, and showing a depiction of how he grew up. So a little fun fact about that singer, his name is Charles Aznavour, and he was actually during the time of like Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and all these other all these other performers, and he actually sang the song La Bohème. So it's actually a very famous song, and it was actually about Montmartre. So that's a little hi. That's a little hi. That's a little fun fact for you. Tell me the ways you love me or I love you. In fact, this is a wall of how many languages?
More than 300.
More than 300 languages of I love you in your own language. I've been trying to look for Mahal Kita for the past 2 minutes. Can't seem to find it, but it doesn't matter because you can learn a new way of saying I love you just by looking at this wall. This is another scene from Emily in Paris where she was with Gabrielle and they were actually looking for a venue as to where would be a perfect setting to launch that campaign about love. And it was also, they filmed a scene here. So I believe that is Rita Hayworth over there.
Yeah.
She's a very famous Hollywood actress from old Hollywood 1930s. And there's a saying that she said that love is a disorder. Then let's all love us. I'm not sure that's really the literal meaning, but it's as if to say the moment you fall in love, it's like it just gets you into trouble, right? And speaking of love, you can actually find a lot of these padlocks scattered all around this place. And also what's scattered, all the different, again, languages of I love you in so many languages, over 300 of them. And the artist of this is not even a very popular artist. He just wanted to create a mural to just literally spread love and to also celebrate it here in Montmartre. So usually we say mahal kita, which is the most generic way of saying I love you in the Philippines. But iniibig kita is actually another way of saying it, which is I am loving you. Very nice. So anywhere you're going to travel in the world, at least major cities, it has its own metro. Look at that. Oh, nice. I have that perfect background with all the bubbles and everything delightful. So we are here at Abbas Station. So again, in every city in the world that has a metro, it has its own distinct qualities that makes it its own. Oops. And here in Montmartre, you are going to find the very first entrance to the subway station, to the metro station. It's here in Abbas. So in 1900, it was first opened, and back at that time, it was so controversial because of the design, how it's so ornate, so many curves, yada, yada, yada. And the locals actually didn't like it. It was kind of like that pyramid of the Louvre, where it was just like, it was like a sore thumb. However, of course, nowadays, it's what makes it so distinct, so beautiful, so memorable, so French. And if you don't feel like taking the stairs, you want an easier route, especially those, let's say, who have some physical difficulties or limitations, you can actually take the funicular. So it's like a very slow moving tram that travels from down, that takes you to the upper part of Montmartre. And there you have it. We had started all the way from the top at the Basilica, the Sacré-Cœur, and now we've walked our way down, traveled through this beautiful village of Montmartre to show you all the different sights, the vibe, and just truly a world of its own, right in the heart of Paris. So I'm Bianca Valerio. Just remember, even if you can't make your way up by foot, there is that funicular down there. And if that isn't even an option as well, you can even take the metro that we saw, the Abbas station, and you can do your exit there and tour around this village on Montmartre. I'm Bianca Valerio. Until our next YouTube video here from Paris. Bye everyone.